What's up, people? Welcome to a brand new and extremely special Wrestle update. In fact, the first of the year for 2026. And we're starting the year off by taking a step back, taking a look back. Now, we got to talk about the best of the entire year and some of the worst, too. We are doing the 2025 Wrestle Update Awards right now, the very prestigious Wrestle Update Awards. And as always, I'm Dylan Fox, joined by my good friend and co-host, Nello de Angelis. Nello, happy 2026. I hope the new year started off good for you, and we're headed for some kick-ass days ahead of us, too.
Happy New Year. Happy 4th year of Wrestle Update. Can you believe that?
Hard to believe. It's been a crazy-ass journey, but would it not be so much more boring if everything was more straightforward? We got to take the path less taken, Nello. We can't just go through the straightforward ways. After all. But I hope that the Grizzlies do take the straightforward ways and do not trade John Morant to the Heat, as has been rumored.
Give him to us.
No. We cannot do that. I don't even know what that trade would look like, considering what Trae Young got traded for. We'd get like the worst players on your team, probably. Somehow we'd get like CJ McCollum would get traded, even though he's not on your team. I would say, but I don't know. But I'm not even entertaining trade thoughts right now. I cannot accept such a thing. We have to fight to get Ja back. We can't. He's in Germany right now. The whole team's in Germany. And things are just at a weird start for the team. But congratulations to my football team, the Carolina Panthers. They got eliminated from the playoffs this week. They let me down, broke my heart once again. Honestly, though, like we were severe underdogs. Like everyone thought we'd get blown out, and we ended up having the lead with like 2 minutes to go. And just decided to play prevent defense for some strange reason that only our genius coaching staff can understand. But either way, fun year. Nothing but love for Bryce. Nothing but love for the fans. Go Bears going forward. Shout out to Ken. Rest in peace. I know he would have been thrilled and still wanted to beat up Caleb Williams after the game. So it's all as it should be on that note. And we have a lot to talk about with this wrestling year. 2025 was a weird year in general. A weird year for the show in a lot of ways because, you know, at the end of it, we really drifted away from any kind of double E talk, as Vladimir Kozlov once said. We got rid of all that stuff, probably helped our mental state, but that stuff still happened. You know, it did not just wither away out of existence, much like an episode of Stranger Things.
I've got some awards for WWE tonight. Do not worry. They are not out of the conversation tonight. They are going to be front and center for some of these.
Well, there's lots of opportunities. Let's put it that way. But regardless, it was just a really weird year. It's not nearly as bad, I will say, because if anybody listens to my other show, Eastern Lariat, which is about Japanese wrestling, we're preparing for our awards there too, me and Striga. And I gotta say, like last year, I got so many comments that were like, man, I just stopped watching wrestling this year, like Japanese wrestling. A lot of people fell off because the product wasn't as great as it could have been. I think most would agree. But in American wrestling, it's not as bad. There's still some of that. Like, I think the tidal wave has kind of reached its apex, with WWE being so hot and AEW with the Wembley show with that huge 70,000 number, whatever. We're kind of down from that, but it's still in a pretty decent spot, I would say. So it wasn't all bad. Just before we get into the awards, what's kind of your vibe heading into 2026 for wrestling in America right now from where we were?
It doesn't feel as hot as it was,
Yeah.
It definitely feels like things have cooled off. The indies are losing. The indies this year are going to be very interesting. We're entering, no prestige, no RPW, no deadlock, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that this is going to be a very trying to think of the word, like a year that is going to be spent building things rather than like doing stuff. I don't. Does that make sense?
It also feels like a year where Vince Russo was the top story at the end of the year, 2025, for the Indies, coming into JCW, which no one would have predicted, and for good
I'm
reason.
going. I'm going to JCW next week. I'm going to paint my face.
Okay, hey, like I said, when we did our coverage of the JCW GCW feud, I thought the JCW show was a lot more fun, actually, than the GCW one, with the crowd for questionable reasons at times, but nevertheless. Maybe you can say hi to Vinny Rue there if you see him. Can you imagine if you met Russo while you were there?
That would be crazy.
That would be awesome. But nevertheless, Vince Russo will not get any awards. Maybe next year for the worst of the year, we may have some for him. But he came through too late for that. So I think I'm going to throw a question out to you for the awards and we'll get to them. Do you think we should either A, cover the worst awards first, then the best awards, or do we mix and match? Like one worst, one best until we get to the Wrestler of the Year?
I feel like the worst awards are almost the dessert. It's because like that's like, all fun stuff for
Okay.
like the most part. So I would say let's do all
Okay.
the best and then let's do the worst.
Okay, we can do that for sure. All right, now we have to go into the best of awards. We're starting things off with good vibes. I think that's a good call. We're starting the year off. We're not starting off with negativity. We're starting off with the good. Let's go to a fun award here. The best special entrance. We kind of condensed the awards from last year's because we had a zillion of them, to be honest. And now we've cut it down to a good show length for both sides, rather than having like 100 for both best and worst. But special entrance. This could be anything. There was no real set criteria for this, just what stood out to you as a special entrance. Which one got the win? What was the best entrance of the year for you, Nello?
I thought about this one for a while and because like entrances are just so important. Like a great entrance sometimes is better than the match you're going to see, or it can be. Um, and that's not to say this is an entrance that's like that, but I thought that this was a perfect entrance. Was an entrance that is a fantastic example of a wrestler and their connection to an audience. It's a special song, it's a special moment. I went with
Oh,
Mystico, AEW Grand Slam Mexico, singing Mi Muero.
first of all, an amazing pick there. That entrance was unbelievable. And the thing is, it was so great. And that whole show was incredible. Um, but that entrance specifically was so great. They kept trying to repeat it in AEW proper, and it never hit like it does in Arena Mexico afterwards. So to see that on national TV, the crowd going crazy. I'm about to give you some super Dylan lore right now. This is a legit story. I'm not making this up at all. It's completely real. It's very personal. That song, and I probably heard it from him the first time because he was in actually the music video for that song. That was a hit at the time, like 2006 or whatever. Um, and I had heard it then, but that song was actually, and people don't know, that song was mine and my ex fiance's song. Like she sang that to me before, so I always get super emotional whenever that plays. And he went through a while where he had a couple of other themes. They had the more Amino theme, which is a good song and a good theme. But this one always hits super special to me. To see everybody singing it, going crazy, that was unbelievable for me. So I absolutely love that pick. I think I almost want to change it, but I am going to go with the one that I picked too, which was not as maybe personally insightful, but I popped so hard. I like this was like one of the better and more surprising moments because it was totally unexpected. There was no hype for it. When Mystico came out, I knew he was going to get a huge superstar level reaction. And I was watching that show with somebody who wasn't even a wrestling fan, and she was like, and I was like, oh yeah, he's like a really big star in Mexico. And she's like, oh yeah, I can tell, based on the entrance. But this entrance, it popped me so hard. It was such a great reference, and I have to go with Hangman Page's Red Dead Redemption entrance. at Full Gear. I didn't like the match itself, the main event of Full Gear. It wasn't great, but to see him come out, well, like Red Dead is like one of my favorite games, and I know that I'm not alone in that at all. But to see him enter to it was just awesome, and I still consider it one of the highlights of the year in terms of entrances. Coming out to American Venom was awesome. That was my pick. What did you think of that, Bello, when he came out to American Venom?
Um, really great entrance as well. Honestly, it's always hard for me. Like this is a hard category, just because like obviously there's only going to be like 3 to 5 that really I feel like qualify for this category. But then to remember 5 entrances over 12 months and
Yeah,
like I feel like this is something I need to start writing down throughout the years. Like keep a list of my
yeah.
favorite entrances, because this is like I completely forgot the Hangman one, and that was an amazing entrance.
That's the thing, and I think it's something that's kind of become underrated in a lot of ways because, like you said, the entrances can be bigger than the match at times and have more memorable moments. And I think people always go with like special entrances and things like that. Going in there, especially at the WrestleMania, like I said. So, you have a lot of cool stuff that you can pull out and that can have memorable things. I think Bianca's at WrestleMania was really great as well. You've got a lot of big entrances over the years. I mean, look at Cena's over the years. This is the year they really dropped the ball on that. They didn't have any special entrance for his heel run or anything like that. I guess maybe in their mind they were trying to make the heel entrance a special entrance. Um, you know, you've had stuff before. MGF using his like Jewish background and stuff and putting that into his entrance, and that was like really special for him. You could have so many great super special. Even in Mexico, there was an entrance when Soberano returned where he came out in a car when he first turned Rudo, and that felt like a superstar moment for him. Car entrances, they've had a ton of those over the years. I remember with Dominic's when he came out of the police car or whatever, when they brought him in. So they've had a lot of good stuff there. Like you said, we gotta step our game up on the entrances. That's my mission to the U.S. promotions this year, and really all the promotions. Step your game up, get the big entrances, and do some big things. And we'll try to write them down and have a more comprehensive list. But both of those were really good. I would say, like yours and my picks are like worthy of winning, in my opinion. Next award is for the Rookie of the Year. So the Rookie of the Year works a little different than maybe a technical one, but more so just somebody who made is a TV Rookie of the Year, pretty much, for AEW and WWE. Somebody who made it on the TV for the first time, much like it took place after the year, but much like Jake Doyle. Making his run in the major league, so to speak, last week on AEW. Jake something finally getting a shot under his real name. But who was your pick for the best the Rookie of the Year for AEW and WWE?
AEW, I went with Speedball Mike Bailey. I thought
Yep,
he had a hell of a debut, really great tag team in Jet Speed, awesome singles matches with Kyle Fletcher, Kazuchika. I thought he had one of the best Okada matches this past year.
me too. Yeah,
Um, if not maybe like the best outside of like, Mascara Dorada and Kinosuke Takeshita. Um, and yeah, I thought that he's, one of my favorite guys. He was my most outstanding wrestler in 2023. Like he was and still is an absolute workhorse killer in the ring. And I'm stoked he's on television now in a high profile way.
absolutely agree. And he was a guy that really thought, man, can Speedball, like, how is this character going to translate to a national audience, and he just came in, and the first time he came out, and, Kid was still alive when we were watching this, he had his debut entrance, and it was against Beast Mordos, and Kid immediately was like, who the fuck is this guy? When he came out with the gi and the kicks, and just his look. He has a very unique look to him. But then you watch Speedball and it's like, damn, this is awesome. All of his matches. And like you said, the match with Okada was amazing. Both the ones though, but not just the one at Double or Nothing, but also the Continental Classic one. The teamwork with Jet Speed was great. I still think they don't really get the most out of these guys because I think they have great upside to them. So I hope that they can kind of look at Jet Speed specifically. They had a great match with each other too in there. I think that was the perfect pick. I would go with Speedball as well as my pick there, and we do have to give him praise and give some representation here. The non-binary king, Speedball Mike Bailey, there. So we love that. Uh, I will give a shout out to a WWE rookie who was actually a literal rookie for this case. Kendall Gray, somebody I was ahead of everyone on. If you go back to our State of the Union, that was such a prophetic show. That had to be one of our best shows ever. I feel like because everything, like with so much said on that show, ended up coming true in some fashion, or we were justified on in the end. But that was my dark horse pick when we were talking about building a promotion around four new people, like four people to build around for the future. I said Kendall Gray has something special. I watched her evolve. And I may have been, me and Ken might have been the last two people that actually watched that show, to be honest, just to give him something to do. But I watched too, and I was really impressed with her. And Kendall Gray came through NXT, debuted, ended up winning the Iron Survivor right away. They just said, fuck it, she's too good. We're going to give her a push right away. Same way they did with Roxanne Perez, but even faster. And I think she deserves it because she's such a unique style of wrestler. Another person I said that AEW should go after was a wrestler named Haley Dillon, who is on the indie scene, and she has a very similar style to her, a very technical based style, which is super unique among women's wrestlers in America. And she's so smooth, so graceful, well deserved. Both her and Speedball, two great rookies. So both companies have some big ones there. Our next award is for the commentary. And this is another one kind of like the entrance where it can kind of be almost more important than the wrestling sometimes. And to be honest, this is one that the entrances, I wish they did more great ones, but this one can be kind of annoying sometimes because I think there's a lot more bad commentators than good ones, to be honest, in American wrestling. But there were some good ones here, and I'll kind of lead this one off. For me, I personally think Ian Riccaboni and Caprice are the best team of any show. I hate what they do with their booking and how, like, not them, but how the promotion doesn't get the most out of ROH that you can, which, by the way, we did a whole episode on Ring of Honor and giving it an identity, which I would highly recommend listening to. But they did not follow any of that. The State of the Union, yes, they followed some. The Ring of Honor did not follow any of our ideas so far. But I love the commentary, and I think Ian is an incredible commentator. Super talented. They always get the wrestlers over, tell good stories. They're entertaining to listen to without being overbearing. And I think that's why I would have to give Ian the nod for my commentator of the year 2025. But what about you, Nello? Who did you pick for this?
Nigel McGuinness.
Another
I believe
good one.
he was my pick last year as well. This guy, he's just fun. I think that he's the perfect blend of like character, legitimate commentator, comedy, seriousness. He knows all the moves. He keeps up to date with everything. He's just, I think he's my personal favorite. Yeah.
I do think that he lost a bit of notoriety because Brian wasn't there this year. If he were wrestling, I think Nigel could be that was really at his peak when he was able to razz his friend and do stuff like that. And they even had a match together. But ever since Brian's come in, they haven't really done anything with those two together on commentary, which I'd love to see more of in the future. So Nigel, I love. I think he's a really great commentator. I definitely prefer his team than the Dynamite team most weeks, to be honest. But I do think he's great. I think he adds a lot to the matches too. That was a very good pick in my opinion as well. Like no shame whatsoever in his game. So we go to another positive award, the most underpushed. And who do you got for this, Nello? Who was not getting the push they deserve this year?
So I don't know if this one is super fair because there were there were, you know, other issues that kind of prevented this person from being in the ring, not just um, not being pushed. But I thought that this was the year for the women's division in AEW.
Mhm.
Tony Storm versus Mercedes, the Mercedes title run, Tony Storm's title run, the Blake Mon or not Blake Monroe, Mariah May Tony Storm feud, blood and goddamn blood and
Blood and
guts,
guts, yeah.
women's tag team titles, right? Lots of great stuff. The one person who I felt like was missing from all of this is still, I think, the OG ace of the division, Hikaru Shida.
Okay. For a
And
second, I thought
yes,
you were going to say Britt Baker.
there were extenuating circumstances, like I believe there were visa issues and whatnot, but I don't
Yeah.
know if that was for the entire year. And regardless, like I feel like she is someone like she's one of the best wrestlers in the company, and I want to see her really mix it up with Tony, Mercedes, stuff like that. I feel like we still haven't really gotten to see that in meaningful ways.
He's somebody that basically carried the company when they just weren't, like, they were not giving the women. And there's still problems now, to be honest, with with the women's division. I would argue, but especially when she was the top person in it in the division, it was nowhere near what it could have been. And I mean, Sheeta this year, she's like around, like, she showed up every now and then. I mean, she did get the match with Mercedes at All Out, and it was viewed as pretty, like, very disappointing. They gave her a bit of a brief push during the Owen. It didn't really last. So she had the match with Athena. That was over WrestleMania, like, time. That was probably her best match of the whole year, to be honest. But other than that, it's like moments, and it doesn't do her justice to kind of bring her in and not do anything with her, and then maybe just give her a title shot, and then she goes away for 3 months again. And that's a problem they've constantly had with so many people in that company, is that someone will have a brief run of greatness, and then they'll just be gone for a long time. And hopefully she can get back, because I agree with you. She has been one of my absolute favorites forever. Pretty much like since she first got into an ice ribbon ring. That's how far back I go with her. And I think that she's an awesome, awesome performer. And I know some people like ragged on her because of the Mercedes match, but I also think people are not being fair when it comes to the fact that she just did not have the crowd. She wasn't able to have the crowd invested in her, not because of her, but because of how they use her and other people. So, she's done good. She's, I saw her recently in Japan. She's not somebody that wrestles a ton, but she does show up every now and again. She was on the 0-1 show. She had a tag match with Shuri at one point. And Sheeta, she looks like she's kind of bringing in a more power-based style. She's got a little bit more size to her now, and she's using it well in the ring. And she could be more of a bruiser type coming forward if she comes back. And I think that's something you kind of need in the division too. Like, I think that she matches up well against people like Statlander, Willow, and in a different role could fare well against a Mercedes type, who's a much smaller wrestler. So I would love to see Sheeta back in the AEW. But if she does, I hope that they give her something to do, Like, they don't just bring her in for a one-off match and then she just goes away and then people are like, it wasn't as good as it used to be. But they didn't give her a chance, really, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For me, that was a great pick. I really have no arguments against that at all. For a second, I thought you were going to say, like, Tony was under pushed. I was like, huh? But no, what you said was actually all accurate. For me, I'm going to go with a little bit of, I'm going to color outside the lines a little bit here and go outside the box. Like, yes, he kind of is pushed, but I actually think there's a ton more upside to Ludwig Kaiser than to be in this comedy gimmick with Grande Americano. Like, I really think he could have been up there as a strong upper mid-carder, like much like his former partner, like where he had a long mid card title reign. I really think he had the chance to be that. He's somebody with excellent promo skills. He's a great worker, like fantastic wrestler, and he's only proved that in this gimmick because I don't know if you watched him in Mexico and with the AAA stuff, but like the crowd loves him. Like, and he's an incredible worker, like super babyface in Mexico, and a likable heel in America. But one, this gimmick is going to upside your upside pretty much. Like you just, it's not going to give you any with this Grande Americano stuff. And I want him to be in a place where they can push him higher. Like, because I really do think he has top tier upside. I think as a talent level, he's way above where they have him right now. What do you think of that?
Grande Americano is like my least favorite guy, sans Jey Uso. I
But that's
am
the
not.
gimmick, though.
I know, and like I think it's very fair to say that Ludwig Kaiser is underpushed,
Yeah.
whereas El Grande Americano is overpushed. So I
He's
think
just a
that's a
comedy
really
character.
fair claim. He just does nothing for me, like this character. So yeah, I would love to see Ludwig as Ludwig.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying this character should be the world champion. In Mexico, maybe, because he's like super over, but in WWE, again, this is a comedy character. Like ultimately, like they're trying. This is not a character to be taken seriously. I don't know how you could, and he's somebody who could be a champion. So I do think that get him out of the gimmick and let him be something. You have a storyline right there with Gunther that they never did anything with, and I think him coming back like that, even as a babyface, I think if he challenged Gunther right now, the crowd would get behind him, and they could do great things with it. Maybe do something with him and Tiffany if they wanted. I mean, they did it with Zelina and Malachi Black, and it sucks. Like that would be way better if you're gonna do a real couple gimmick at the end of the day. So yeah, I'm going with Ludwig Kaiser. Get him out off the mat. Even though, like I said, he does honestly the best you can with this. Like this is a dead gimmick, no matter who's doing it. But he does his best with it, and I praise him for that. But he needs to move up the card and do something more serious, in my opinion. You can put anybody in this stupid gimmick. Put Bait and Dunn in there. Like, leave them behind. Let them be the fake luchadors if you want to do comedy gimmicks. But not him. Like, he's too good for this. But yeah, good picks. All around, I would say. Most improved. Who started the year off at a certain level, and then by the end you see them at a better level, you've noticed their improvements, you like what they bring to the table, you like the cut of their jib. Who'd you pick for this?
But this person started off the year as a really fun character. And by the end of the year, they were still a fun character, but they were also a title holder. And I felt that they did not feel out of place in any way on this team with the title. And I think that that says a lot in terms of, transitioning from just being a fun character to a pro wrestler. So I went with AEW's Harley Cameron.
Yeah, she her feud with Mercedes, like that was really her moment where remember they did the music video with the puppet and then it like cut out in the middle and she cut this incredible serious promo. Like that was one of the best segments of the whole year, I would say. Where she had this goofy rap and then it cut out and she cut this amazing promo. Again, like super babyface. Very likable character. You know, she's in a good spot. I think tag team is right for her because I do think her wrestling ability is not up to a standard of a Willow, to say the least. But I think in a tag team run, you could kind of help that a little bit. I think that I think they said that it felt like they really had a chance with her as more of a comedic character that burst out into something serious. I think, like, kind of what WWE tried to do with Maxine. I don't think that's ultimately worked. I mean, they gave her a belt and they've given her a chance, but I just don't think she has it in the ring at all yet, to be honest with you. And I think Harley is lacking on that, but has so much more natural charisma to her and is a great character worker. So I think she was always like that, though. To be fair, I think the push, she really developed very naturally, in my opinion. Actually, like she came through, uh, worked her way up, broke through a little bit of a glass ceiling as a comedy character to more of a serious one, but still maintained her kind of goofiness that she has in a good way, and it's led to a great title win at the end. So. She's got definitely more of a push, and she feels like a worthy competitor in the division. I think without her character work, she would be more looked at like Sky Blue and Julia Hart, who are what they are, at the end of the day. And she's a lot more liked for a good reason, I would say. So it's a good pick. I think she improved a lot last year, too. That would be my only note against that. But I'm also kind of going a little bit outside the box again with mine. So at the start of the year, this guy was like DOA to me. I had no desire to see him do anything ever, like pretty much. He meant nothing to me. He was a relic of a bygone era, and
Don't
somebody
talk
that
about John Moxley like this, dude.
no, like he hasn't improved. So I wouldn't pick him. Like I said, there was a shit. I gotta lose my place.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Anyway, I didn't like him that much at first. I thought that the gimmicks, he was in a terrible position on the card, and he just didn't do anything for me for much of this year. But suddenly, it's funny you mentioned Moxley, because suddenly Moxley, I don't know what caused him to do this. I really don't, because it still doesn't make any sense when you think about it. But he just woke up one day and he said, damn it, I'm going to make Kyle O'Reilly a star. And Kyle O'Reilly suddenly turned into one of the most interesting and best people on the roster. And he had a good run at the end of the year for the last 4, 5, 6 months. Where now heading into 2026, he's somebody I can't wait to get back. I want to see what he's going to do as a character. And I've never liked him as a character at all. He was always, his ceiling as a character was guy playing air guitar with the belts in NXT, like, as a tag team. And yeah, him and Roddy are good as a team, but I thought that he really showed so much growth and a shocking return to form after basically a decade of mediocrity that I was stunned by it. And he really, really won me over. And again, I was never honestly his biggest fan. Like, I'm not going to say he didn't have great matches, but I always thought Roddy was the much better workhorse of that team. He was somebody I truly thought was one of the best. And O'Reilly was like, okay, he's okay. Like, he's a good third man on the team. But now he feels like a top level guy that can lead a faction. And I think it's great booking, but also he performed so well. And I loved his matches with Moxley. I thought he was incredible overall. I know that's a little outside the box because I think people have fonder memories of him a decade ago. But if you look at his run the last 2, 3, 4 years, there was nowhere close to what he did the last half of this year.
Yeah, great pick.
Yeah, again, it's a little outside the box, but it was good. Best storyline here. You got a storyline, feud, whatever you want to call it. What do you have in mind for this? Like, what was your best storyline of the year? It could be anything you want here. So you've got a lot of options. What was your pick?
This one, sort of tied up earlier this year, but it's a continuation of one from 2024. But since it climaxed this year, this is still the one that stuck with me the most. I kept going back and forth on Paige and the Death Riders, but I think that, Euphoric Recall, right? The ending was great. How we got there, it was pretty fucking long and tedious. So I would say, for me personally, Tony Storm, Mariah May, and the Hollywood ending.
I think that's a good pick, to be honest. I'm not going to say it was, I'm not going to say it was some kind of like super complicated story or anything like that. They tried to throw in some twists and turns with the whole amnesia angle. Which, if you remember, when Tony first came back as her...
I loved that, too. I think that was something we actually disagreed on. Was like, I loved it, and I remember you were not a fan.
Well, the thing is, I was just about to make that point actually. Like when she came back as her normal self, she got a huge pop, and it felt like her character was kind of developing into something. And they went to the amnesia stuff, which I didn't like at all. Which you do remember right about that. I think the whole feud there was many ups and downs, but ultimately it ended in such a spectacular way. Like that's a feud that if you cut, like if you took the five best moments, it looks like the greatest feud ever. But then you have to count it was like a year long storyline, and there was a lot in there that I didn't personally like. But I think most people will just resonate with the overall feud and probably agree with that, to be honest. And I thought it was great. Like, don't get me wrong. I do agree with what you said about the Death Riders thing too, which has only gotten worse, I would say, with time. Nothing against what they've done. The work may be great. Like John Moxley's doing incredible wrestling right now. But as a storyline, as a narrative, there's no reason at all he should be the main character of this company over Hangman Page. Like it's something I've been saying for 5 months at this point. It never changed. Like yes, he lost the belt, but he never stopped being the main character of this company until the very end. When now MJF maybe considering what he's doing Dynamite recently, But it's just like the story could have been done a lot better. They picked it up by the end for sure. Okay, so here's the thing: that storyline was awful and almost company ruining bad until Hangman beat Osprey in the Owen Hart final. From then to All In, it was a great storyline because everybody knew what was coming and saw the end in sight, and like the goal was clear and focused, and they weren't doing stupid stuff and making up stuff and just throwing shit against the wall like they were doing the first 3 to 4 months of that. Um, so like the Hollywood ending was better, I would say, than that. But this is one that I kind of struggled with, to be honest with. Like I don't think there were a lot of great rivalries or anything like that this year. Um, they tried to do some different things, and I respect that. But I think really in all the companies, I honestly was pondering the JCW GCW thing as the best one on there because at least that had a good beginning, middle, and end, and big moments in between them. But obviously, the wrestling quality wouldn't match up to some other stuff. For me, I think that in AEW, you had a lot of great things, and I kind of bring it back to my last one. To me, the Moxley and Kyle O'Reilly feud that took somebody from nothing and made him like a main eventer, and it was really all due to the greatness first of all, but to the unselfishness of John Moxley. So to me, when I put that together, and I was like, yeah, that lasted a good 3 months, 2, 3 months, and started out of nowhere. Like, we were just doing the thing with. I mean, this shows you the difference between a Kyle O'Reilly and a Danny Garcia. Like, there's two different levels of talent, and one is much higher than the other, and that got proven with how they've done it. What they've done with Moxley's deal that he did afterwards. So to me, that's the one that caught me the most. I think there's been some that were okay as well. I like the idea of big picture angles because both of those, like Tony and Mariah, that was a situation when Mariah won the belt. Everybody knew that she was not going to drop that belt until she faced Tony again and dropped it to Tony again. It was like a big overarching picture. And with the Death Riders, most people knew that it was not going to end until All In. But it took our time and wasted a lot of it, to be honest. Um, with the Death Riders, honestly, I was in favor of him dropping the title at the start of the year. I would have said, I really think that. Remember, they had that Powerhouse Hobbs title match as a babyface, and I thought, why not just flip the script and do something totally different? This is not working at all, and instead they said, no, Dylan, we're going to put Cope in the title scene. More on him later. In fact, there. But for me, the O'Reilly and Mox feud, that was the best one and accomplished the most. Tony and Mariah had the best ending, though, I will say. Like that's kind of what matters the most when you think about it. The only thing I would have changed, and I think would have made that even better, and I kind of felt the same way about Tanahashi and Okada, where it was like, yes, this was awesome, but there's a small difference I would have made that would have made it that much better if Tanahashi had won, in my opinion. And with that match, the winner was right. Like I definitely had, I would have ended, the match itself was basically perfect how it was. I wouldn't have changed basically anything about it. Except I would have had it be the main event of that show. With the end coming up and the fade to black, that should have ended the show, and it would have been one of the most memorable pay-per-view endings, too. And I think that would have made it that much even better to be the first women's main event of a pay-per-view. And it would have been much better than what we actually got with, the Cope and Moxley, which I have no respect or love for at all. So that would have been the one difference I would have made to that overall. But yeah, there was a lot about that feud it just didn't move me, to be honest. But a lot of people did. I think most people would agree with you, to be honest. Overall. What about the best moment? Which, ironically, I'll go first. For me, it was the ending of the Hollywood ending. It was the best moment of the year for me. I think that the way they did it after this incredibly brutal and heartfelt match that they put together, to have it end perfectly in character with the black and white and the end coming up on the screen, and the fact, hey, this is one of the moment also kind of extends, in my opinion, this award, both in the Japanese awards and this one. The fact that Mariah, this was basically her end, that helped it a lot. She was not able to do anything of note afterwards, after this. Now, she did have she did her best at the end of the day with this Blake Monroe thing in NXT, but I don't think anybody would say it could even come close to to what we had. Although that was honestly a best moment for me too. Thea Hale winning the title, and not letting her go up. That was awesome for me, and I would love to see more stuff like that in wrestling. Even though I'm sure a lot of people don't, but I do as a fan. But compared to the Hollywood ending, man, that was the perfect, true ending for somebody's career arc in a company, and I thought it was a perfect ending and a perfect moment. What'd you think?
Great choice. Obviously, one of my favorite moments from the year, with it being my favorite storyline and feud. However, I went with Adam Page winning the world title at All In. He's still my AEW ace. He's still the heart of the company for me. And to see him back on top of the company, yeah, it didn't pan out so great. But for that one moment, Dylan, for that brief moment, everything was perfect. And I had a blast.
And it was that was great. I thought it was a really cathartic moment for the fans too, because it's something we knew we all wanted, and so many times we see them mess things up. Like not just AEW specifically, but all of wrestling, no matter what company, where it seems like they'll have the ball on the 1 yard line and they'll fumble it. And here they didn't. They had the perfect finish to the match. He tapped out. Hangman got to. I will say this honestly about the moment. I actually thought it could have been done a lot better in general. In that they did all the stuff with the run-ins and tried to do an Avengers Assemble type of match. Similar to this was basically their version of Cody beating Roman. Like pretty much the match itself was almost the exact same, just maybe a bit more violent. The part where I think they lost the plot a little bit was him not being able to open the briefcase at first, at the end, and that kind of killed the crowd. But thankfully, when he opened it, it still got a big pop at the end. To finally see the belt come through after a year of being locked in the briefcase. So all of that was really good, honestly. Again, yeah, I don't like the follow-up at all. I think they totally bungled Hangman's title reign in every possible way. I think there was 1 to 2 good things about it and 10 things I hated and would have changed. But for that moment, I think that's the one that will stand out. I hope that it lasts, because the way they've booked everything since makes it seem like it actually didn't change a whole lot. But I hope that it lasts in people's mind, because at the time, it was a really incredible, cathartic moment for the fans, I would say. Who was best on the mic to you here? We got promos. Who cut the best ones? Who touched your heart the most in wrestling by simply talking into a microphone, much like we're doing right now?
All right, this person is just fire on the mic. I think it's because they are so in tune with their character, everything they do, but everything they say, it's just it's so in line with who they are. It feels so authentic and it's so funny and just fun. Um, Tony Storm, again, for me, promos, backstage segments, commentary, just
Yeah.
public appearances, everything. She is so much fun and she is
She doesn't
so
even need a
goddamn good at what
microphone.
she does. No, she's just like even like a 10-second interview you'll see with her, like, talking with some random podcast guy who's just got like a Tascam mic held in his hand, and she's still like the most fun person in the world. She never phones it in, and I still like she's still my favorite character in wrestling. What
To
about
be
you?
honest, I'm still not. I still don't love this character, in all honesty, because I think it's just like so all over the place in so many different directions. But even I can't deny that she's not among the best promos. Like, honestly, I think that I would probably vote for her too this particular year. Like, let's look at some of her promos. One of the best had to be when she revealed that the amnesia was a ruse going on there, and everything like that. Where, it was basically like, remember Mariah turned on her again, beat the hell out of her, and they were talking about like everything you forgot or whatever, and then she was like, what makes you think I've forgotten? And going in there, and she cut this incredible promo where she was talking about blood and all the rest, going in there, and it was a really great segment, like one of the best of the year, I would say. And then there was another great one where she was like, one day many years from now, people will sit to themselves and ask, whatever happened to Mariah May? Which may very well be true, but how things are going, to be honest. So she just had great stuff. She had the part where she was like, I am here, I am queer, and I will always be timeless.
Yep.
So lots of great promos. Honestly, like this year, it's hard to really deny her. There was a lot of good ones though. I actually think Osprey cut some really great ones before he left, and that was something that was considered a weakness of his. Heading into the Page match, the part where he's like, "I'm calling out for a shootout, bruv." Yes, of course he always says bruv. So yeah, and he was calling for a shootout and all that. That was a great promo. The part where he was talking about where it was like Swerve and Hangman were feuding, kind of, and Osprey was trying to get them all on the same page, leading into the All In match. I thought that was a great performance. Hangman cut some good promos too this year, so we do respect that. Um, so there were some good ones this year, I would say. Is there anything that's kind of standing out in your head, like something like a promo somebody cut that was like, man, that was awesome, like one of the best promos of the year, type of thing?
No, I mean last year I think we talked about that for the Love of the Game promo, if I'm
That
not
was awesome.
mistaken.
Yeah. And
But there's
he's
not.
still on my list, but he didn't get the chance to cut those kind of promos this year compared to a Tony.
Yeah, and like there's not one that really stuck out in my head. What about you?
No, just the ones that I mentioned were all like standout ones.
Yeah.
And again, like Briscoe didn't get the chance. I still think he might be the best pure talker, but for whatever reason, he was never really able to get. And you'd think he would have been able to with the MJF promo, where he really could have dug deep that whole feud was kind of not my favorite in general for a lot of reasons. Even though I liked the match that they had at the end, like it came together well, and I'm glad they didn't go back to it. To be honest, because I was afraid that MJF would come to beat him again. And I mean that did elevate Mark at the end. I do have to say, as much as I dislike MJF, we have to give that feud credit. But it wasn't any major promos between the two that you would have thought like, damn, that was incredible. But yeah, that was good. Another good one that I liked was the Prince Nana promo when I remember when Ricochet was feuding with Swerve and he stole his Jimmy Rave's jacket and stuff. and Nana cut a very serious promo that was like, "Hey, this belonged to somebody close to me. Please give it back." And Ricochet was a bullshit. Basically, afterwards, I thought that was a really good promo by those two as well. At the end of the day, um, trying to think of like any WWE ones that stood out to me. Like you had the one where Cody told Rock go fuck himself. Like that was good. Like I guess I think we all enjoyed that overall. If that counts as a promo, because you did get to see a turn then too, which was an incredibly memorable moment. So I think that might have been the best one overall. So, but still though, Tony Storm, that we both agree, we both pick her the best on the mic there this year. Even though again, the character, a lot of people like it more than me, but I can't deny greatness. I had to give it up to her. Who's the best tag team? Who's the best tag team of the year now?
Rodito. No one else came close for me. I thought that these guys were so much fun. The fact that they came together this year and they were still the best tag team of the year, I think says a lot. They really gave life to the AEW tag team division again. No disrespect to the Hurt Business, but their run kind of killed the division more than firing it up. You know, and Brodito coming in, they were workhorses. They were always defending the title. The matches were fucking insane. Their final match against FTR was so good. I hope we get more of them in the future. What about you?
Honestly, I would agree with you. My problem with them is we just didn't get enough of them. Like they didn't have enough time when you compare them to an FTR and they had all year. You know, at the end of the day, they weren't always the champions, but they were always doing stuff. You know, like they had matches up and down the year that you can point to where they did good things. And you know, all the way back when they were, you know, doing stuff with, you know, and they're also too. They're often on Collision, and I think that kind of takes away from them a lot to a lot of people. If you look at their year, because they had this feud with Paragon, like O'Reilly and Strong, earlier in the year on Collision, and they had some like 2 or 3 great matches, and it was around the January or February, and so they were doing some great things there. You know, you had the stuff. They had a great match with Jet Speed at one point a few months ago. That was incredible. Obviously, the Brodito matches. They even had one of the basically the best match ever with the Outrunners this year too, which is a big feather in their cap. And ultimately, I just think there's too much of them and not enough of Brodito. Even though I actually, as a fan, like Brodito better as a team. If they keep Brodito together this whole year, I'll probably pick them the way things are going. If not Jet Speed as well, if they continue the division. I think the division, much like the women's division in AEW, there's work to be done in 2026, but they have the pieces in place to where they can do it. And that, again, I really have no problem picking them because they were awesome, but they just didn't have enough time as an FTR, which I think basically started off the year cold storyline wise, and by the end felt like worthy champions. And I don't dislike them anymore like I did for a while there, mainly because they were teaming with Cope. Up next, we go to the Indie Wrestler of the Year. This is your zone here. The Indies, as you said, it was a rough year for the Indies, I think. And I mean, they've been down for a while now, but this past year feels like one of the worst ones, really out of anybody's control, but more so the economy, I think, unfortunately, was the biggest enemy of the Indies this year. But nevertheless, who was the one wrestler you would point to as the best indie worker of 2025?
This guy was actually with AEW up until earlier this year. He debuted for GCW in June against Slade in a death match.
I thought about him. Yeah.
He quickly became one of the best deathmatch wrestlers in the scene today. Felt like a real attraction, which has not happened on the indies in a while. Had my favorite indie match of the year. Won the Nick Gage Invitational, his first ever deathmatch tournament, and ended the year winning the Independent Wrestling Television World title. Bear Bronson.
I thought about him, and I think he had a really great year. And one, I think, again, automatically, we're all rooting for this guy because his exit from AEW was really bullshit against him. Like, he did nothing wrong whatsoever.
Yeah.
And he was in a really tough spot. Now, going on his own, he had to really make his own way. And he did. Like, he did an incredible job. To me, he's a great pick. I really this is one of the ones I really thought about to the last second because we took a few extra days to record that I had planned, and I took the time to really try and watch as much as I could to make the best awards I could have. And I really wanted to focus on the indies because it's a scene that sometimes the way things are now, a lot of it just kind of comes and goes by for me. Like, there's nothing really that stand out a lot of the times. So I tried to dig in deep, and I found a lot of great stuff. And he was somebody that was on my mind at first, but the more I dug in, the more I actually ended up changing my mind. For me, if you look at his year, and he's a guy that he was always around, and I'd seen him a bit because he was facing like legendary players, Timothy Thatcher, Amazing Red. He had a match with Ali before he re-signed with TNA. He faced KZ earlier in the year in the Dragon Gate shows. But if you look at Marcus Mathers, I was watching his match with Fancy Ryan Clancy, who's a guy I was a fan of in Noah. He's like a young guy that really brings some great work too. He's another guy I think is going to be a great prospect going ahead. But their match together a couple of months ago, I ended up watching that, and that was a hell of a match, man. like this was like, okay, the indies aren't totally dead yet. Like, that was kind of how I was thinking, like, when I was watching that. And I had known Clancy, and I knew Mathers somewhat, but I didn't see them in that kind of match. But when I look at his run over the year, I think he had the most complete year. Bronson had probably the higher highs, so I do agree with you on that. But I think, once again, I'm going for the overall year. At the end of the day, Mathers was put into good positions. Again, look at all those names he faced that I said earlier. He wrestled some of the best ever, even if it was like maybe they're later on in their careers, like a KZ or an Amazing Red or whatever. But it was a good stuff from him, and the Clancy matches really won me over with him. Which by the way, those two also had a match with Bear Bronson, like as a triple threat at the end of the year, which was also great. I highly recommend checking that out. Mathers, Clancy, and Bear. At the end of the year. So both of those would be my top two picks, to be honest, and I think they're both worthy.
Keep your eyes crazy? It's like AEW released Bear, right? Because they were like, we don't have anything for this guy. Look at who he is now and tell me that he could not be an absolutely killer Death Rider. Like, he would have fit in so well with them. It's like the hardcore heavy guy who like teams with Moxley in the bloody matches and shit like that, man. That would have been so sick.
He seems perfect as like a Moxley tag team partner, honestly. Like, the storyline would have made sense. He found this guy, basically a lost soul, like doesn't know what he's doing, and bring him into the Death Riders and bring in the deathmatch stuff into it. That would totally fit Moxley's run, as well as activate Bear's new life that he's carved out for himself. But I'm really happy for him. That was the feel-good moment of the year. Mathers, I know he was involved in that like WWE ID stuff that fizzled out hard, like after like a month, I think. And they were just like, WWE ID, we don't want to do that anymore. And the indies were like, we don't really want to work with WWE that much. And they were like, please book our guys. And the indies were like, no. And then they're like, okay, I guess we're just going to do this anymore.
Dude, the biggest WWE ID story of the year was them severing ties with the company where the Raja Jackson place. That was the biggest mention of WWE ID all year.
Yeah, that was that wasn't even a win, really. But that was like the most noteworthy thing they accomplished with it. Talk about a movement that accomplished nothing.
All publicity is good publicity. Not true, dude.
Not true. No, not with that. Not with that. That was not any kind of good publicity at all. At no end. Like, that was something that messed with a lot of people in a very negative way. Let's say it that way. But yeah, so Meadows is again, the whole ID thing is basically done now, but he's still out there, still doing some good things. I think he's headed to Dragon Gate Japan too in a week or two.
Awesome.
So I think he'll do great there.
You know what he reminds me of, man? Because I've seen Mathers live quite a few times. Like, at least I've
Yeah,
seen this guy wrestle more than 10 times live. He
yeah,
is a pro wrestler's pro wrestler.
yeah.
Everything he does, he has ways to connect in between the moves, whether it's going to be a little action that he performs, like almost like an anime thing, right? He has all of his sounds down. Kia fucking, whatever, dude. Like he knows exactly what to say when, like he's just so fine-tuned and fires on all cylinders. And I think that whatever company eventually does pick him up is going to have a hell of a future prospect.
Me too.
G-
Uh,
Great pick.
yeah, I think there's some guys coming up that will make some names for themselves uh in the future in 2026 coming in there. I really hope Manders can have a breakout year this year because he was somebody I really had my eye on at the start of the year to like break out big, and he had chances. Like he had some good chances this year, but I
Felt like
felt
he
like
had a bigger year across seas than he did
yeah,
domestically.
yeah, it felt like he really took his foot off the gas here, but really did big things in Europe on there. So I really would like to see him put it all on the line in America this year because again he had chances and it just never really got there to where I wanted it to be. But like you said, he was doing great things across the pond too that has to be recognized. And I think if he comes in with a big, I mean I don't know how we're gonna do WrestleMania weekend. This might be I honestly think so because we know it's going to Arabia next year this WrestleMania weekend may be the best, like the grand finale kind of this format, and we may see a huge year for the Indies on WrestleMania weekend. And he's a guy again. He was all over the place this year, but nothing really stood out. I'm hopeful that he's a guy that really takes the bull by the horns and is like, all right, this is the year I get signed, type of
N-
deal, like with him and Mathers and Bronson. I'd love to see get another chance as well.
Not to go on too much of a tangent, but man, so the collective this year sold out in 10 minutes after public sales went live.
Right.
GCW, they'll run pre-sale codes the night before. So it seems like 90% of the fucking tickets moved the night before public sale even went live. But to me, I just want to say, like, dude, that shows like there's still such an investment in WrestleMania weekend domestic side. Like people wanting to not just be there for WrestleMania, but to be there for the biggest weekend in wrestling each year. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year because if AEW does run a big event in America that same weekend, which they should, it would make sense for the collective and those shows to go to the AEW show that year, right? And who's to say that that won't be the suit the next year if AEW does it again or something like that? If the collective still sells out and they're able to say, well, we can do the same amount of business with AEW and, whatever, like, they're going to maybe send us wrestlers, unlike WWE, for just a blood sport or something, right? But I think that next year will be very interesting in terms of the power shifts kind of between AEW and WWE domestically speaking.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's definitely they could do that. But the thing is, we also have to consider if All In will be in America, like like this year as well, or will they go back to London in 2027? So that kind of takes away a little bit if it's not there. But if they can, I like if All In was in America, I think they could totally do like make that the weekend could totally work for the Indies. And we'll see how it goes. But I will say though, I do think this year, like you said, things sold out right away. I think the promotions know this is basically the end of an era, one way or the other, even if they do jump on something else in the future. And this is going to be the best weekend, WrestleMania weekend we've seen in forever. And I hope we can do the similar amount of coverage that we did last year for it, because we busted our asses like last year on WrestleMania weekend. We were the best in terms of covering that weekend, in my opinion. And I would love to do it again this year if it all works out. So we went to the Indie Wrestler of the Year. Let's talk about TV. Purely on TV, we don't count the the dark matches, the indie matches that were streaming. We don't even count pay-per-view. Purely on TV, who is the TV champion? The true TV champion, 2025. I'll go first, since I fed uh, that one to you, the indie wrestler for you. I will say, for me, when you look at their appearances purely on the shows and what they did over the course of the year, and I think again, right away for the Continental Classic gives AEW an advantage on this over a WWE. And even a TNA this year, since they're making their return to the big time, so to speak. When you look at the Continental Classic run, you look at the matches that he's had on TV earlier in the year, I think there was a guy that was a clear winner, in my opinion, who just happened to be a somewhat of a TV champion, but more so a TNT champion. I would have to go with Kyle Fletcher here. I think he did everything right when it comes to the matches. I still think he ended the Continental Classic ending how it did made me wonder about him because it just felt like he was in the exact same place a year later. But if you look at the match quality, so strong. Like his run was awesome. Like over the years, he was doing stuff on every show. He had great matches like Collision, even with the likes of like an Ace Austin type of player. Then you had his run on the Classic where you had like all hits pretty much. Okada, Knight, Speedball, uh, Moxley, in the final, although that's not on TV, I guess that was on World's End. But still, nevertheless, he had a great run. Even Jungle Jack, like I said, he had a like Jungle Boy's best match on Collision right before Christmas. So he was doing some great things up and down the year. He was doing some standout work as a heel, doing stuff against Kyle O'Reilly earlier in the year. Uh, and on top of it, he just is a guy that brings it and gives his all every single time. And I always appreciate that work ethic. So for me, Kyle Fletcher was my guy for the TV Wrestler of the Year. I present him the TV title, but maybe you disagree. Who do you got for this one?
You're gonna hate this pick. This is still my guy after all these years. Yeah, the first half of the year was a little bit punishing, but I thought that he still had good matches, even though. And once he lost the title, I felt that he absolutely turned it up a notch. He had multiple matches that, you even mentioned with the Kyle O'Reilly. And that was all television pretty much, right? That entire feud and all of the matches.
Yep.
Had a lot of great multi-man matches. Some just, I just thought all around still very fun, good promos, all that stuff. John Moxley is my guy.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't hate that. I think if we only counted the second half of the year, this would be like a slam dunk win. But I do think the first half of the year also counts too, and I think that was when things were a little less so overall. And even as a champion, they kind of kept him away from a lot of TV matches. And the ones he did have, I just remember a match he had with Shibata and stuff early on, and I was like, whoa, this was one of the worst Shibata matches I ever saw in my life. Like that he had. And it wasn't really his fault. Like, obviously, there was a bunch of bullshit involved in it, as there is in all of his matches at the first half of the year. But by the end, the second half was so great, I think he kind of became undeniable. And, I mean, I really can't hate on it too much. Even though I do think if you look at the first half of this year, there was a ton of stinkers, like a ton of bad matches that he had.
Fair.
But the second half, he had a lot of great matches, overall. So we're going with a recent. Like, it might be a little recency bias, but I think, to be honest, I think a lot of people would agree with you. To be honest, I don't think this would be something that would be considered even controversial at all. I think most people would agree at the end of the day. But I will go with the full year Fletcher. So the overall best in ring. So this counts everything: dark matches, pay-per-views, indie matches, doesn't matter what. Who was the most outstanding wrestler of the year 2025?
So it was funny because you had just mentioned this person, and if I did not, I try not to give multiple people multiple awards. Like
Okay, so
someone
this makes
like
that last award make more sense now. Maybe we go on.
yeah, because like okay, like Tony Storm, right? I gave her promos and then I gave her storyline. I feel like that's pretty fair. But if I gave her like promos, TV wrestler, most outstanding, I'm like, it's not really fun for the listeners. I feel like to hear the same award get fucking handed out over and over. So I always try to say one award, one singles award per wrestler. So for me, this was Kyle Fletcher. Um, and the reason I picked him here is I thought that his pay per view work was so fantastic as well that for me at least, he was so much more than just the TV wrestler of the year.
Yeah.
Like he had one of the best matches of the year with Moxley, cage match with Osprey, absolutely grew in so many ways. First singles title reign. I mean, when you look at this guy compared to when he came in the company as one half of Aussie Open until now, it's really crazy the transformation he's had. And I always enjoy watching his matches.
Could have said it better myself. I have no similar hang up about giving multiple awards. I will give him, much like Ultimate Monet, if she was able to be in all of these awards, I would give somebody as many titles as I feel they deserve. And Fletcher, to me, deserves this. I think you are absolutely correct. But I'd also like your way because it's kind of like the title system. You know, you give somebody a TV title that's a little lower, like that in prestige, and then you give somebody else the one who maybe would have won both. You give them the bigger award, so it's kind of like you even things out and make it more balanced your way. You know, again, just like in a TV show, like you wouldn't have it would suck if a wrestler had the TV title and the Continental title or something like that, which we know because they did it with Okada and it sucked at the end of the day. So you've kind of booked it much better, I would say. But regardless, ultimately you came to the conclusion I agree with most because Fletcher was the most outstanding guy. I think he just killed everything. Like, there was really no big hang-ups. And again, I think he gave his best, no matter what situation he was in. I'm trying to think of somebody who delivered big on TV constantly.
That maybe didn't get any pay-per-view presence. See, to me, I'm like, that's Kyle O'Reilly. Like, no pay-per-view presence, hell of a TV streak.
Yeah, I think so too. He did have the one pay-per-view match with Mox at the end of the feud, which I did think was a great match, to be fair. But he had some good tag runs with Roddy, but collision matches overall, nothing too spectacular or making any waves. So he's a good pick too. That would be in there. But he didn't have the overall run that Mox had in a similar time frame as well. So I think your pick won in that sense. Indie Match of the Year, another Indie award. You mentioned it earlier. I know what it is. I bet the listeners who listened before also know what it is since we covered it. But why don't you give it up to everybody? What was the Indie Match of the Year for you?
I'm a deathmatch guy. There's no secret about it. I'm a sicko. I love this stuff. For me, it was the final, or not the final. God damn it. It was the world. Not, I'm messing this up so much. It was the GCW Ultra Violent title match between Bear Bronson and Matt Tremont. I thought this was not only the match of the year, but the number 2 death match, or I would say number 3 death match of the year, behind our El Desperado, Takeda, Kasai triple threat, and Kasai Desperado singles. So definitely the best American death match of the year. I've watched it probably 5-6 times, which is rare for me to watch a match multiple times. And each time I just kept loving it more and more.
That was a great match. For sure. And again, we talked about it. It was very emotional and very well done. And I think it was a great story that Bear got told throughout that weekend. So there was a lot of great things about that match for sure. And again, I'm not as much of a deathmatch guy as you. I'm really, I like death matches before. Like, like we've talked about this a number of times, and I've talked about it a number of times with myself on both shows. But I like the old school death matches where it was more of a build to something crazy happening rather than just like, okay, light tubes. Like, a lot of times, like that's how a lot of the modern ones devolve for me. But that one, that really stood out as special, along with the three-way match you talked about before in Japan. That was also a great match, as well. Like those were legit great death matches for sure. And it was like, okay, like there's still juice left in this squeeze, in the deathmatch world. And Bear Bronson brought it back. The match he had with Slade was really good too. I would say so. Like he really killed it in the deathmatch sector for sure. But that was the one that had the emotions, the overall story, and everything about it was great. So I really have no problem with that. That was one of the standout matches for me too. Like, if I made a top three, it would be in it. In all honesty, uh, for me, I went through a match, and this is almost kind of like a homer pick in multiple ways. If you disagree, I really get it. Like, I'm not gonna try and fight you over it. I'm just gonna tell my truth right now. Speak my truth. For me, if anybody knows my background, everybody knows that DGUSA was a huge bridge, for me, like the original version. And so to see that brought back this year for WrestleMania weekend, and for them to bring a show out and put on a match the caliber of Angel Divino and Ultimo Maldito versus the Panther Brothers, that made me really happy, and a frustrating show in a lot of ways. I don't think they nailed the nostalgia aspect of DGUSA at all. I think they could have done a lot better. Again, I mentioned it that week when we covered the show. Lenny Leonard not being on the show was insane in multiple ways, in my opinion. It really dragged down the vibes. But that match showed us this brought me back to the Dragon Gate stealing the show at WrestleMania weekend of the mid 2000s. Obviously, everyone knows the big Ring of Honor 6-man tag. Blood Generation Do Fixer. Like that's a name that everyone knows. Like it's just the match itself. I don't know if this one will have that level of legacy, but as a match quality, I thought it was just spectacular. I really won me over on the whole weekend. On a weekend that had its ups and downs, and we're going to get some of the downs very, very soon. But I think that match itself had a special place on my heart representing this brand that did mean something to me at one point, even if it's not been the same for many, many years. And not even been around for many, many years. And even the last few years of it wasn't what it should have been. So I loved it. I loved your match too with Tremont and Bronson. But that one captured my heart the most. So I'm going to go with my heart here. Go with the Panther Brothers, Arcangel Divino. Oh, two guys who I loved a lot too in Mexico. Anyway, they've fallen off over the years. They had some troubles in AAA, some clashing of heads and egos and blah blah blah. But to see them break out on the scene again, it was freaking awesome. I love that match. But nevertheless, we got to move on to the overall match of the year. It could be anything, any promotion, as long as it took place here, in the great continent of North America. What was your match of the year, Mel? Which you may also be muted.
I am. I'm so sorry. This one is the beginning of something that I'm going to be talking about a lot in these four final awards, probably. But I was there live for it. Double or Nothing,
Okay.
2025. Adam Page versus Will Ospreay. Best match I've ever seen live, without a doubt. Um, just incredible. It was everything I could have hoped for. It felt like a real, Masawa Kobashi level face off between two massive all time personalities in this company. It was very special. Two of my favorite wrestlers, Paige is my favorite wrestler in the company. Hell yeah, this rocked.
I wonder if you, because I remember us doing the show, and you were like in a hotel room coming back, like from that when we did the show. Remember? Um, and we talked about how lame the seats were in the arena.
Yep.
That was a very fun episode, people. I highly advise y'all to check it out. I wonder if that subconsciously like raised the stakes for me at the time. Because I'll tell you now, I totally agree. This was my pick for match of the year too. I will say again, this has a personal relationship with me too. It was the last major match me and Ken watched together before he passed away, and he was bummed out at the time. Osprey was his guy. He wanted him to win, and I was like, I'm in between. I like both of them, so I was like, I don't care who wins. I just want a great match. And boy, did they give us a hell of a match to main event the show. You had the great moment afterwards with the handshake, but just the match itself was incredible. It felt like, and because the title matches have been so lame to that point of the year, that felt like the biggest match in the company of the entire year. Even though it was just technically a build-up match to the All In. Before that happened at the time, this felt like the biggest match of the year. And I will say too, I picked our next award was Show of the Year, and I picked Double or Nothing, but you were there live.
I
So
also picked Double or Nothing. Anarchy
yeah,
in the Arena was the craziest thing I've ever been a part of at a pro wrestling event. Singing Bodies by Drowning Pool was the coolest shit ever. I had the best time.
and I wasn't even there live, and I still thought it was the best show of the year. That was incredible. That was one of the most memorable Anarchy in the Arenas. They've done a lot of ones that were good. Right? Remember that one where you had the band come out in like blackface a
Oh
couple
my
of years ago?
god, dude, that was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a lot better than that one. I would say. Although that did have a good payoff with the Bucks super kicking that guy, which was hilarious at the time. But this show was so damn great. I loved that the Okada match on the show. There with Speedball. We
Yeah.
talked about it before. We thought that was one of the best Okada matches that he's had.
Mercedes
In there.
versus Jamie was a banger, real fun
Yeah,
show. Nigel and Daniel Garcia versus FTR.
yeah, that was fun.
Um,
Yeah, like that was
that's
a
good
really
stuff.
good match.
And also, I
Uh,
want to shout out my indie show of the year was another show I attended live, Death in the Desert. I love a death match tournament. I got to see Abdullah Kobayashi. We smoked weed with him. It was the coolest shit ever. I had a great time. Shout out AZ Deathmatch Company.
Absolutely. Our very well received interview there with Mark, or with James, excuse me. I'm looking at Mark Briscoe's name here. On there, the owner of the company. Mark Briscoe does not own that. James Davis does. So check out our interview with him. It was a ton of fun. One of our best episodes, I would say. So that was a great episode. The tournament was great and very cool that you got to see that. But still, Dumb or Nothing was an experience watching. So double agree on both of those match of the year and show of the year. What about the women's wrestler of the year now? We're getting into our MVP type of awards. Who'd you have for this?
Um, I had already given Tony a lot of love, and I didn't want to give her more again, just because I wanted to keep it variety. But this person, we're here to talk about specifically North America, but it's hard to ignore everything that she did outside of the country as well this year. She held the belt for pretty much the entire year. She had multiple matches, pretty much all title matches, women's tag team tournament, all fun stuff all around. Mercedes Moné. I felt like it was just kind of a home run for her. It was her
It's
Ultimo
what
Dragon year.
Ultimo Day.
Yep. Damn.
I will say this. We've gone through all of these awards, and neither of us has given anything to WWE. Well, I mean, it's true. Like, I mean, I don't think there's any real argument for any of these other
I
awards.
didn't even realize that.
Although Kendall Gray, again, that was close for me. Um, these were the closest awards I got, honestly, like the MVP ones, because I actually think there were no good MVPs. Like that's the real truth. Like this was a really down year for various reasons. Somebody always had something going against them. Half of these guys ended up missing like half of the year, or Moxley, like him being on was actually, it would have been better if he had missed the first half of the year instead of what he actually did. Mercedes was more in and out of the company. She didn't really click until the end, and even the belt collector. The thing is, I don't think they really know what they're doing with it. Like with this gimmick, they're having her lose. There's still a bunch that she still needs to lose, and I don't know how they're going to get out of all that. We saw her drop the falls to Red Velvet, and I think it's not a good way to go about it. To where now she's suddenly just losing everything. Like I get what they're doing. It's a storyline that's pretty obvious, to be honest. It's not like this. It's this complicated deal again. But her match quality and really what she represented made her the MVP to me. There wasn't anybody that really had her level fanfare to her. Even Tony, she was in and out of the title scene. Always a main player because they love the character so much. But and now like she's doing the tag thing too with Mina, which I think is good. I think people like with the dance and all that stuff. Mercedes, though, felt like the top star of the company just because she was consistent. The TBS title, she was always winning things. And she had some great matches this year, too. Like, no doubt, if you count the in-ring appearance, like, she has to be considered just by quantity as much as quality as the MVP of the women's division. But again, I did think it was close. I think Io honestly has a great case to her name. And she was in some not great circumstances, whether it was Naomi running in, and they had an incredible match, Io and Rhea, and that ended up getting messed up. They had to do this extremely, extremely like interesting angle with Kabuki Warriors and Rhea, where they're trying to do like a Mariah Tony like queer baiting type of deal, like with those two, and like I don't think it's really has the legacy of that other one, but it is a top storyline at least. And they're doing stuff with her constantly, and it's very impressive. And the work has been sublime. That WrestleMania weekend match, I mean, again, that was another one, that triple threat match with the women, Rhea, Bianca, and Io. We both said that was our match of the whole weekend. And I don't think either of us was going in there thinking a WrestleMania match was going to win that title. And to this day, it was still one of the best matches of the whole year. So I do think Io deserves props, but I still think Mercedes meant more to AEW's women's division ultimately. Even though it was kind of close, I would say. What about the men's best wrestler, men's MVP? Who did you have there?
Adam Page. He's my guy. Hangman. Owen Cup winner, world champion at All In. He had a hell of a year. Yeah, it didn't pan out that great, but he was still in the world title picture up until the final pay-per-view of the year, still featured in a high-profile way. I think that his tag team with Swerve, should they fully commit to that, will be really interesting. So even though the year didn't end for him and the way that I had hoped for, I'm still interested in his journey.
This is a tough one. Again, I don't think there's actually any great candidates. Like, there's all sorts of flaws you can point to pretty much anybody you or I say if you want to argue against them. And I do have to say, in this particular award, it's going to really hurt me, to be honest. Because I think even the bad stuff, he was still the top guy of the entire company. And then he became the best guy in the company for the second half of the year. So it's kind of like, do I punish you for this horrible run you had, which cost, like Moxley cost the company, like in my opinion, at the first half of the year. Like he turned people away, and not just him, but really the booking of his faction, more so than him. Hangman, he had that burst of greatness, and nothing nearly as bad as what the Death Riders were doing. But it also doesn't feel like he ever really carried the company at any point. Like he basically had 1 or 2 nights of being the top guy of an entire year. And they were great, and he's great. Like, I love his wrestling, and his promos are good. There are some that, like, he's kind of a hit or miss promo for me, but mostly good. I would say more good than bad for sure. But he just never had that moment where it felt like he's carrying the company on his shoulders. But the guy who did it so bad for the first half of the year, but then he did it great. So I'm just totally confused. Again, in WWE, Cody was the champion all year, but his matches weren't anything great, and he didn't have any buzz attached to his reign. Like, he was in the shadow of SmackDown, which is like a dead show in a lot of ways. Gunther was great when he was there, but missed most of the year. You know, not most of the year, but he missed a few months. That kind of took him down. Like, I honestly could see him having the best overall case, actually, of anybody, because I think everybody's flawed in some way. It's really tough. Like, this is the hardest award for me. But if you ask me to go with my heart, and who I personally liked the most over the year, despite all the criticisms, I think I would agree with you. Like, I think I probably would have picked Paige. They fumbled him, but I still liked his run, ultimately. Like, there was much more good than bad. And he was a central character for at least the most important part of the year, even if it didn't last nearly as long as it should have. So I think I'm going to go with him, too. Even though it's really hard. Again, I think all of them are very flawed. But I would go with Hangman. Like, I'm going to give him the win. He feels like the right choice, even if the reality didn't match our expectations. So yeah, we did that. We've done all of the positive awards. We got things off on the right foot. What do you say we start going to some terrible things that happened in 2025? Talk about all of our least favorite things.
I like to call this portion the WWE Awards.
There's definitely a lot of those. I have some AEW ones too, though. However, I will admit here.
Yeah, you wanna rapid fire these ones? Just go back and forth on them.
Sure. Like I said, let's start with the most disgusting promotional tactic, the most serious award. Actually, like, what'd you have for this?
The return of Brock Lesnar. Same night as WWE really debuted and clung onto the current administration in America. Pictures of Triple H with Donald Trump and stuff like that. And then that was all chased with, what's essentially like drinking sewage water after doing a shot of, cleaning products. Brock Lesnar returning. It says everything that, that you needed to hear about this company and where their morals lie, what their beliefs are, how they conduct business, and how they view human beings.
Yeah, that was my pick too. I actually thought about the Triple H thing, but that wasn't really. Again, I always go back to this. What's a promotional tactic at the end of the day? Brock coming back was a promotional tactic. Like, literally, like, they think this man can help draw them money. It was kind of our breaking point because we kind of cut off WWE after that moment, like, pretty much for the rest of the year. It's still, I mean, in all fairness, like, WWE is still not as bad as UFC, I would say, like, in terms of a moral clause. Nor should we judge any company by moral clause, in my opinion, or else we hate everything, like, pretty much, in a lot of ways. But that was bad. Like, that was a direct promotional tactic. That wasn't even just something that they did something morally questionable for a soulless business reason. They directly did this thinking it would promote and help the company. Which it didn't. Like, to be fair, like, Brock has not made any difference to WWE in a business sense in the second half of the year. If anything, probably only added negativity. Like, he probably hurt the company bringing him back, which they deserve, for sure. But it was a failed promotional tactic on top of it, in addition to being disgusting. So I guess in some ways that's almost a win for the moralist among us, and we're happy to see that. But still, that sucked, and it was a very, very bad night for WWE for sure. What about the worst feud? I'll start this one off. For me, since you started the other one, for me, no doubt, this is an easy pick. MJF and Jeff Jarrett, unquestionably the worst feud of the year. It was a feud so bad they had to end it before it could have an actual ending, because they cut one of the absolute worst promos of the entire year against each other that turned into offensively bad with the misogynistic tendencies that they both showed in there, and particularly and with these sorts of things, I've always said, like, I'm all for pushing the envelope if you're a heel. Like the famous MJF and Takeshita promo, I had no problem with, because the only reason for that is because MJF looked like an idiot and it set up Takeshita to get a babyface comeback and win and look better and stronger. Here, the babyface being offensive is a fail, like 100% of the time. You cannot ever go there, and they did for some reason. And on top of it, Jeff Jarrett getting a main event program in 2025, that right there is a huge red flag. Like it happening at all. And the fact that it was so terrible made it even worse. There was no feud that touched me on a bigger angle than this. Absolutely the worst feud of 2025, in my opinion. What say you?
John Cena, Cody Rhodes.
Well, that was bigger and a more high profile and also terrible. So I think that's a very worthy pick, to be fair.
What I remember from this was the WrestleMania lead up where you had John Cena playing a heel and he wasn't really a great heel.
It was awful.
And then
that was
their
awful.
SummerSlam build up was John Cena literally said, "I'm not a heel anymore." And they hugged and had like a fucking beer and then had another bad match. It was crazy for being the two arguably biggest stars in the company that you could have possibly have had matches with. It could not have been more of a fucking dull, unmemorable feud.
The heel turn was awful, like top to bottom. Like it was one of the worst runs we've ever seen from a top guy. That kind, unfortunately for Cody, he got dragged into it, but the whole feud was terrible. Like the matches sucked, and I guess in some ways that actually saved it, because an MJF Jarrett match would be horrible, and I think your pick actually was better because it was more high profile. It lasted longer, and it had more stupid stuff with the phantom face turn that Cena had. Purely, again, it's another situation. Same thing with Jarrett and MJF. It was so bad they had to cut it without explanation. Like that's when you know something sucked. And that was the top storyline for the company. So actually, I kind of agree with you. I think you won me over a little bit. I'd go with yours, actually. Even though I do want to give MJF bad awards, if at all possible. Worst moment. What do you got for that?
So Travis Scott entering the main event of WrestleMania.
Nah, we have the same one.
Shit. The dumbest shit. It's like soiling the importance and value of what it means to be in the main. Like the night before, the whole thing is CM Punk talking about how much it means to be in the main event of WrestleMania, and then the next night, Travis Scott just walks into it. And it was like just so like unremarkable, so uninteresting, so fucking slow. Oh my God. Just, yeah, shitty all around. And I think is a defining moment of this new era of WWE.
How long did you have that Fane song stuck in your head for?
Still do.
Because they played it 10 million times during the build up to
Fane.
Yes, it was awful. Like the whole thing, the song was bad, but also Travis Scott coming out was the worst. Everything you said, Nello, there are so many languages in this world, and you chose to speak facts to these people. And I could not have said it better myself, but there's one thing I would add on to that. The storyline called for, and people expected The Rock to come out.
Yep.
And instead we got Travis Scott. Like, I think that alone is an automatic fail. Like, this was a layup for worst moment to me. Nothing they could do, like, no matter how stupid some of the Death Rider stuff was, could beat this. And it was just such an awful match, awful angle, one of the worst finishes to a WrestleMania ever. And never even went anywhere. Again, it's another, just like we talked about in the last two. It was so bad, they basically had to retcon this whole thing with Travis Scott. And nobody misses him. Nobody was asking for that to be resolved. Just a terrible, terrible thing. Worst show of the year. I'll take this one. Survivor Series to me. Everyone hated it. Nothing happened. The War Games match as a whole sucks. And we were on a run of War Games matches. We talked about it at the time. Because we had the GCW, JCW one, which was so-so, in my opinion, kind of below average, actually. But I said it to you. I feel like I always get into the big feuds that lead into War Games for GCW, and then the match happens and it never delivers. Even the Freedoms ones from a couple of years ago, and especially last year with like the Bubba Ray deal that they did. But and I was into the feud, and the match didn't deliver. Then you had AEW, which was awesome. The Blood and Guts matches were both incredible matches, like the men's and the women's matches. And then you get to WWE, it's the same tired crap with EO jumping off the trash can. Like, yeah, that was cool the first time 5-6 years ago. But we've seen it every year since. It's nothing special anymore. Then you have the other match, which was basically a one-sided beating, and then a fucking masked man runs in that we don't even know who it was, if that was really Theory or whoever. The show was just interminably boring, top to bottom. Everyone hated it. Even the most ardent WWE fans thought that show sucked. And that tells you something. So for me, that was the worst. No AEW show comes close. What's it?
Yes. Survivor Series War Games.
It's time to retire this concept, Trips. Like, get rid of War Games, bring back the old school Survivor Series.
And like Blood and Guts being the week or 2 weeks before it did not help their case at all.
And I think that's another one where they had built up to a surprise. And we got the Masked Man, which was a dead angle with Austin Theory.
I don't think WWE can successfully do hardcore matches because they're so anti-blood, and I feel like blood is so intrinsic to a hardcore match, to a no DQ, to a War Games, to a Hell in a Cell.
Yeah.
Like, if you're telling me that these two guys literally want to kill each other so much that you're putting them in a cell and it's called Hell in a Cell and neither of them's going to bleed, like, I don't believe you.
It's almost impossible to believe that, considering the circumstances of it. But I do think that's a good point. They don't have to be a hardcore company. They can do something else entirely and do stuff that they want to do. But the stuff with no blood, I totally agree with you on that. That really drags down a lot of this hardcore stuff that they have going on. There was some good matches in WWE, don't get me wrong, this year. The Callie Armstrong and Kendall Gray I mentioned earlier. The AAA matches, Vikingo versus Gable was good. AJ and Cena, I enjoyed that match as a nostalgia trip where they did everybody's finishing moves. The one on NXT WrestleMania week with Javon, Femi, Trick was good. Dragunov's had some great matches. You had the Machine Guns earlier in the year having some great matches as the tag team champs, and the Triple Threat at WrestleMania, and even Io and Rhea, even though I got messed up with Naomi. Like, there was some good matches of a different style. Tried to do the Blood and Guts War Game, that's over. Like, stop it. Like, you're not doing justice to the concept, and it's a bad concept, first of all. Like, Blood and Guts overcame a bad match type, in my opinion. And it's already going to be starting from a point of contention for me. Listen, Survivor Series has a 3.88 rating on Cage Match. And you had Stephanie versus Nikki Bella in that match, which, that didn't work at all. And I'm much softer. I will say I'm a much bigger fan of Nikki Sawa than some people. But that match failed. It was all a bad show, top to bottom. Even Cena took the fall. They had a million run-ins. They don't know what they're doing. ESPN gave it a low grade that Triple H got mad about and cried to himself about probably again. It was just a terrible show at the end of the day. Just a terrible, terrible show. What was the worst match of the year for you?
Look, I could be cheap and throw shade at something like a Butterbean versus Minoru Suzuki. Yes. Was it terrible? Of course it was. Was it unfathomably bad? Yeah, absolutely. Um, but was it the main event of WrestleMania?
Eh,
No. It was a match on the collective. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. Come back on the stage, grab your second award of the evening. Worst match of the year from WrestleMania. Just, I think that like we kept talking about WWE from WrestleMania up until SummerSlam, I believe, is when we kind of started covering other stuff. But I think that this was really the moment where I just completely fell off.
when Travis Scott walked out. And we praised, if you remember, we praised the Elimination Chamber. Like the turn itself was great. Like we talked about how well, like cool that was. They're finally doing a Cena heel turn. What are they going to do with it? They've got so many options. We thought this is like 20 years in the making, and then they give us this, the ultimate fan betrayal for John Cena. But nevertheless, not a bad pick at all. I would say, and definitely under your circumstances, it was the biggest match of the year. That was also a train wreck. However, and I will say this, that I remember you warned me not to watch Butterbean and Minoru Suzuki. Your exact words were, "It was Heroes of Wrestling bad," when you messaged me, which I did pop for. And I watched that match finally, and I watched that show, and by the end of it, I realized A, how right you were, and B, how the worst match of the year was the one after it with Maki Ito and Mickey James. I have to say, one, because someone looked drunk in that match, legitimately, cutting a promo. Two, this was the only match of the year which featured not just a bad wrestling performance, not just two bad wrestling performances, not just a bad wrestling performance and a bad promo in the middle of the match. It featured all of those things, and it featured two terrible singing performances. This was the one match that featured someone screwing up at three different things in the same match. There was no other match that featured that in the year of our Lord 2025. As amusing as it may be to some to have Mickey Barry Meltzer randomly, why would it be during the middle of the match? Why did they transform into a karaoke break? Why did this happen? Why did it happen after Butterbean and Minoru Suzuki? Which, by the way, as terrible as it was, at least it felt like they they were trying to accomplish something in the realm of pro wrestling. And they had the pro wrestling spirit of both men having too big of an ego to do a job. Mickey and Maki Ito was not even wrestling. It was something of a totally different class. It doesn't even get star ratings. It gets negative zeta. A totally different numerical system is how I'd rate that match. And unquestionably the worst match of the year, in my opinion. What about the award for the most overpushed? You know, I guess I can take this one. MJF. Like it's a totally easy for me. Like totally ridiculous that he's the champion. He brings nothing to the table that deserves to be the push that he gets. I don't know why people like him so much, or certain people like him so much. Not that many actually, because we saw what happened when he was the champion last time. How that worked out for the attendance. Uh, but I just think he sucks, and for some reason he's always a top star and wasting all of our TV time, as we saw last week with the Bandito promo that he had. And yeah, they could put a lot of different guys in his spot. What about you? Who's the most overpushed person?
So I went a little bit off the beaten path here, so no WWE shade here. This is someone who showed up a lot on my independent radar, made it to the finals of both of the top deathmatch tournaments, and I think he's a decent talent, but I can't ever say I've seen him in a remarkable match or even a great match. Otis Kogar for me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it feels like he gets rubbed because of Atticus. Having the
Yep.
name kind of gives you an automatic rub, pretty much. Uh, but he's not good. I agree with what you were saying, to be honest. Overall, um, I think that if there was an indie person, I think that's a good one, like kind of a nepo type of push. I don't know if that was as egregious as like an MJF for me, but I get it from in that realm. In WWE, you always have freaking to look at. Uh, and I think we both agree that we don't want to see the chick magnet as the world champion, but still, at least that makes more sense than freaking, in my opinion. But nevertheless, I still went with MJF, and Otis Kogar is a good one for the Indies. What about the worst women's wrestler of the year? You can pick whoever you want. Who is the worst of the year?
This person wrestled one match. Um, it was such a fucked up, terrible performance that I legitimately think that she also ruined Maki Ito's entire year.
I
In
love
like
it.
this 5 minute span. Mickey James, I think, gave like it was one of the all-time worst performances in a wrestling ring I have ever seen. When she stops the match to shoot on Meltzer, and then she does a sing off of Hardcore Country. There's barely any wrestling. I think that she legitimately set women's wrestling back during that one.
Nello, that's why I voted it worst match of the year. Like I said, that's why I said that she's a triple threat of terrible wrestling. Wrestling, promos, and singing. There's no other match that had featured bad of all three at the end of the day for a live performance. And Maki was also bad singing, I do have to say. But what can you do? And to be fair to her, she bounced back, signed with Stardom, starting the year off right, going to be in her biggest role in her home country, and maybe she can get things back on track. But that was definitely a black mark on her career and all of our lives. So I would never, question that. At the end of the day, that was a great pick on your part.
What about you?
I would go with Maxine. Like I said, like the Mickey stuff was
Oh, so many people thought she's like most improved, probably.
no, no. I mean, that may have worked for a few months ago, but then you saw the match last week, and like once you get it down to her wrestling and them trying to make something out of her, this didn't work. The fans did not buy into her, and they were rooting for Becky to win at the end. Yes, they got behind her as an underdog, but her as champion just didn't work, and she was pushed on their show, which is inexplicable to me. And there's nothing wrong with her as an underdog player, but they used her wrong, and she's just not that. She's just not very good. Like that's all there is to it. And maybe she will improve at some point. I mean, she has improved. Like she went from like way like worst, like one of the worst wrestlers in the world, to at least capable of having a match. But I wouldn't say that makes her good at all. And she got the most shine. I honestly thought about Julie and Sky Blue too here. Like I mean, they had some real stinkers up and down, but Sky Blue did bleed buckets during that Blood and Guts. So that saved her for me. She's still terrible, and I don't want her to wrestle like
Damn.
ever. But she did bleed a lot, and that deserves love and respect, in my opinion. That saves her. But Mickey, again, it's kind of like she only wrestled one match, but it was that bad that I can't really argue it. It was that bad. One of the worst matches ever. Finally, the worst wrestler of the year. Who do you have in mind?
Oh boy, am I ready. Um, this guy started off the year in such a terrible way, just ruining my fucking mood during the Royal Rumble.
Oh,
Knowing
oh,
he was
God.
going to fucking beat Gunther clean at WrestleMania, the King of Geet. Um, what did Triple H say? not the best in ring, but really connects with the audience.
Well, he
The
wasn't lying.
man, the myth, the entrance, and nothing else. Jay Uso. This guy fucking sucks, dude. Oh my god. Like, if there was ever someone that like perfectly just encapsulated the WWE style, it's Jay Uso.
Yeah. It's really hard to argue that. Honestly, when he won the Rumble, I actually didn't hate that much because I thought it was a legitimate surprise. It's like, okay, like this isn't who I would have picked at all, but at least it's somebody way out of left field. And he had just had a title shot, which actually makes his impending push even worse. He had just lost a title shot. So there was really no reason to run this back again, no pun intended, with Gunther. I like the win of the Royal Rumble. Him having to wrestle matches every week, that's where the House of Cards collapsed, unfortunately. That, like you said, that may be the one time in Triple H's entire career and entire life that he did not lie on camera when he said that he was not the best in the ring. And for that alone, that makes him an excellent candidate to win. For me, I thought about him, honestly. I feel bad because I do, like I said, he does connect with the people. He does have an entrance. He's got good energy. You know, his promos are okay. He's not really a bad promo. Like, yeah, he has the 4 letters, 1 word, type of deal. Um, I like him and his brother actually as characters and promos too. As a team, I think this is a much better role for him. So I think they got him right eventually. So with that said, somebody who I thought never got it right and also stunk. In addition to having bad matches, he was pushed as the champion. They tried to build a company around him. And then this is my theme of my worst. Everything that I hated was something the companies themselves also hated and had to pull the plug on eventually. And for me, the worst rest of the year has to go to the man of a million nicknames. The man who did not debut on Stranger Things Raw. The man who I have no idea where he's at and don't want him to debut anywhere. But I'm going with Chris Jericho, the King of New York. His run with Bandito was so bad. And the fact that they put so much self-importance on him, trying to say that him being the champion would get ROH a TV deal, that was so damn bad. And on top of it, the promo sucked. He held down people. His stuff with Big Bill and Brian Keith never went anywhere. He just disappeared and fucked off to be with his band. I have no interest in seeing him in 2026. Somebody who I once liked and appreciated 20 years ago. That's all gone away. And I cannot stand him, and I just don't want him to come back, even though I know it will probably happen. Probably at the Royal Rumble, and the way things are going. But nevertheless, we did dodge a bullet on Stranger Things Raw. How long will we last without seeing Chris Jericho in our lives again? It's a big question. It's a big burning question heading into 2026. But your pick of Jay is not wrong either, I would say. But that's it.
So before we go, real quick, best and worst promotion.
Worst promotion. I don't know. Like I said, they all have flaws and bad stuff about them. To be honest, I probably hated AEW the most actually by the end of the year because I was so annoyed at that World's End show. And the thing is with them, the problem with them comparing them to WWE is with WWE, I have no expectations actually. I kind of always expect the worst thing to happen and things to go bad. With AEW, I think they can be great. And then they let me down over and over and over and over. And the indies just don't have that much of a range to be anything. So with that said, I'd have to go with NWA as the worst promotion, for sure. They lose us all again. They're pushing crazy people. They don't get the most out of any of their talents. And they're just a blight on the surface of the world of pro wrestling. Billy Corgan, you suck. What?
I'm going WWE worst promotion, best promotion, CMLL.
Yeah, CML is the best promotion by far. That's the best promotion in the whole world, in my opinion. They had a great year, like lots of great matches there. We talked about it a little bit on the Lucha Talk show. Last ever Lucha Talk, too, with me and Micro. We will be back with a new name, new swag. Companies got in the way of the Lucha Talk legacy, so we'll figure it out in going forward. But yeah, CML rules. I said AEW is probably a better company than WWE, like, in terms of the TV show and stuff over the year, if I had to pick one of the two. But they frustrate me more because, like I said, I think I care more and I expect more. So they also hurt me more, unfortunately. But yeah, it was good. Do you have anything? What kind of predictions do you have for 2026? What kind of year are you thinking it's going to be? Like, what's your vibe of where we're going?
Um, I think we'll see WWE alienate its fans further price people out.
Bring Jericho back and drive off more fans. Yes, I agree.
Detach itself further from sort of reality. And I think that AEW is going to have a strong year. I think that the indies are going to become GCW. I could see GCW even running more shows this year.
I can see that too, actually.
And I think that CMLL will be the best promotion of the year again.
All very valid and fair picks, to be honest. Trying to think of somebody who may make a big jump, may get signed. The thing is, it's hard now too with signings. There's no room for these indie guys. Like, not only are they not as good as they used to be, like AEW has so many people. Like, just look at Jake Something getting signed. He's at the bottom of the barrel pretty much. Like a tag team with Mark Davis, it's hard to get lower than that on the card, and that's like who they're bringing in. They didn't need to. 25 guys in the roster could have filled that role. So it's hard to see a lot of upward mobility for anybody going forward. You just have to hope that maybe a company can break out. Maybe there could be a challenger brand. But again, it's really the economy's got to turn around and help some of these companies out, and maybe we'll see a return to form for certain indie companies. And maybe more new blood will come in and do some great things. Is all of our hopes. WWE and AEW, I hope that they can just kind of be straightforward. Don't do stupid stuff as much, and try to get things back to a focused product, which I don't think either of them really are. But with AEW, the good thing about them is that their roster is so loaded and they let them have great matches that we can always kind of fall back on that. Like, even if the creative's not great, we'll have the Continental Classic, and the Owen tournament and stuff like that you can always be invested in it as a fan. And that will always help them. But I do think there's work to do for sure. What do you think's going to happen with TNA? Like, how do you think this new run on AMC, a major company, how do you think that's going to play out for them?
I don't think they're going to change at all. I don't think that the network TNA is on has ever mattered. It's just TNA. Like, TNA is always going to shoot themselves in the foot. They're always going to hold themselves to like a certain level, which is not very high.
That's also true.
And they're just going to be like the little brother to WWE that just repeats everything they say. Not interested. Very disinterested, honestly.
Do you think Jericho debuts on the show? Because I wouldn't write that off that he's not there Thursday.
Oh, you think he debuts for TNA?
It wouldn't surprise me.
He definitely would get a world title run there.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking. There. The thing is, TNA is basically like how Ring of Honor is to AEW now. I mean, it's not as bad because they don't directly own the company. Like, so it's a little bit better, like more independent than ROH to AEW. It has an identity. It sucks. It's a bad identity, but it is an identity nonetheless. But if Jericho comes there, this is the perfect place. Keep the title for a few months. Probably drop it at Slammiversary and then come into WWE at SummerSlam. Maybe even less than that. He might just win it and drop it in March and then you can come to WWE for WrestleMania. I could see that happening. I also don't think it's impossible he doesn't make the jump for the Rumble. They have some good guys on their roster. Some girls that are talented for sure. As a product, I don't see a lot there to really be excited about, I do have to say. But I will check it out. I will watch this on Thursday, give them a chance, even though I'm not very confident. I like Santana. I think he's a really good guy to kind of center the company around. They booked him just so stupid and horribly after Bound for Glory last year in true TNA fashion that's all accurate too. But I will give them a chance. I'll give everybody a chance. I want these companies to overachieve on my expectations, even if they're getting lower as the year goes along. So I'm trying to have a positive mindset. And hopefully it's a great year all around. But most importantly, I hope it's a great year for me and you. Great year for the show and a great year for all the fans out there. As always, we're getting out of here. You get the floor, you get the stage. Whatever's on your mind, whatever's in your heart, you can say whatever you want. Just talk to the people right now, Nello.
Check out my mixtapes.
Where can you get those?
aessentials.shop, the pro wrestling section.
Check it out, people. Got some cool ass mixtapes coming up. I want to say one more thing before we get out of here. Unrelated to American wrestling, but congratulations and best wishes to Risa Serra, who is a deathmatch icon and just retired.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. My favorite.
Yep, exactly. I was thinking about it when you brought up your mixtapes. Like, we got to give some love to Risa Serra now on here. So hopefully she's doing well, and she will be missed. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys for checking out the awards. Hopefully you guys had a lot of good awards of your own, good picks of your own, maybe even some more stuff picks of your own. But no matter what, keep watching, keep checking us out, keep your eyes peeled and your ears open. And until next time, this has been your Wrestle Update.